Hey, it's time for Streaming Idiots. This is Tom Sinclair, your chief idiot, coming to you with just a bunch of idiotic stuff about streaming, though. It's cool. Hang around. We'll be right back. Tom Sinclair here with Streaming Idiots. What a great time. What a great time. Thank you for taking time out of your day. If you're coming to watch us live or if you're watching us on YouTube, thanks for that too. Be sure and subscribe. And and by the way, periodically we will release either pre-release to our list, our email list. And oh boy, did I start that in the middle of the sentence. Let's try again. We have a place on our website, easternshorebroadcasting.com, where you can sign up for exclusive video content. And what that means is that when we're releasing something, like this show, for example, we'll send you a note before it's released to the general public. So you guys get to see it a couple days in advance of its regular release. This is generally released video on demand on Fridays to YouTube, but to our special list of folks, and anybody can be on it. You just have to call up and ask, or write us and ask. And but to anybody that's on that list, we'll release that. It's either Wednesday night or Thursday morning. Just depends on how the workflow goes. So you kind of get a chance to, if you watched it live and missed a few things, then you can go back and watch it again. Not a big deal, but we're just trying to add a little extra value for folks. And so if you're interested enough to send us your email address, we'll be interested enough to let you know when we've got something out there that's, we think, pretty interesting. Today's show is going to be about, let's see, we're in the process of a portable PC build, and we want to go into that in a little bit of depth. We've got a giveaway contest coming up in March, and we want to go into that. And we've got two new products that are actually being shipped into us that we want to review in the future, and I want to talk to you a little bit about that. So let's start out with one of the products. There is a product out there in the world made by a company called Tally Lights. It's tallylight.com, and they make, well, obviously, they make Tally Lights. And the Tally Lights they make are either controlled by a USB controller that just simply plugs into your USB drive and then has a bunch of different essentially audio cables, but they're not carrying audio. They're just carrying a preview and a program signal to a Tally Light. You can see the Tally Light there on the right-hand side. Ted Kazmierzak from tally-lights.com has very graciously sent me a full complement of Tally Lights. It's going to be 3 Tally Lights and the controller, the USB controller, and then the wired Tally Lights. And they are somewhere in, I think, Tennessee right now, on their way from Michigan down here to Alabama. And they're unfortunately, they didn't arrive in time for today's show, but they should come tomorrow. And with any luck, we'll have Ted on next week to show us how they work and why you might like them. The other thing that we've got in the works is, and for those of you that are taking in Skype guests, or specifically more than one Skype guest, this is a product called LiveToAir, and it's by the folks at NeuralNet. And essentially, it actually started out as a Skype product where they had 4 Skype connections that would come into this single PC, essentially. And they would take each one of them and send it out on a SDI out. I guess maybe a Blackmagic Quad or something like that had SDI out, so that your production PC could receive these 4 channels of video as if they were 4 cameras. And I know that one of the problems that we always face when we talk about doing Skype or even WebRTC or Zoom or anything like that for our guests is that if you have more than one guest and one of the guests drops out, or if an extra guest shows up, then you have to reconfigure all your screen captures because they get all messed up. And so the folks at the folks at LiveToAir have figured out how to fix that by bringing all 4 of those into their PC and then sending them out as 4 separate video signals. I guess it was probably about last summer that Skype discontinued their API in the way that the folks at LiveToAir were using it. And so they saw that as a great opportunity to jump from Skype, which, as you know, Skype can change the rules whenever they want to WebRTC. So if you're a WebRTC enthusiast, you'll be interested in this too, because now essentially what they're doing in their box is they have 4 channels or 4 separate WebRTCs video chats coming into their box, and they're converting that and sending it out as 4 video signals. And I think you might even be able to see there on the screen. Let's see if we've got a better picture of it. They also have audio built in, so they're picking up the audio from all of those and sending those out. And they have mix minus built in, so they're taking care of all the problems that you have in this one box and sending it out as a pretty darn clean feed to your show. The box does require an operator, and there would be actually a camera on the box and a headset with the box so that the operator can communicate with the folks as they're calling in. So you can take these folks and you can send them straight to air, or you can put them in a virtual green room and let them chat amongst themselves until it was time for them to come on the show. And it just adds a real high level of professionalism to a show. The box is about $7,500, so it's a good investment. But if you're doing that kind of show a lot, it will make your life much easier and allow you to have a more professional production. So that's what we've got coming down the pike is a good look. I mean, we'll actually have one here in the studio that we can test with LiveToAir. And I think what we might do, because sometimes those kind of demonstrations don't always fit well into a show format, is that we'll have our regular Streaming Idiots on a Wednesday, but then we might have a special show that will be just sort of open-ended, kind of a behind-the-scenes look. We'll set up some cameras in different places so you can kind of see what it looks like and see how somebody's operating it, and let you call into the show and try it out. So that's going to be a lot of fun. I think that'll be a good way to test out that product and see if it's everything that it proclaims to be, and give you a chance to see if it's something that you might like to have in your studio. And then we'll also, of course, have Ted from TallyLights.com on to do a similar thing with the Tally Lights, and that should be sooner, I think, than LiveToAir. We'll just have to see. The contest that we've got coming up in March will probably start the middle of March, and we'll announce the prize winners at the end of March. And what we're suggesting, and I'd love to have your input on this, is that you can, excuse me, let me click over on this one. You can, sorry, I lost my train of thought because I was reading chat room. Don't ever read the chat, because those guys will try to distract you. They'll say, hey, Tom, look over here. What we're thinking about the contest is getting you to do something. You can't just send your name in. It's not that easy. But we want to get you to do something and enter a contest with your something. I'm thinking of a video. And to use your favorite live video production software, so that would be VidBlaster or vMix or Wirecast, and submit a recorded video where you show off one or more of the features in that software that you've sort of mastered that feature, or you are exploring that feature, or you want to demonstrate how you use that feature. And then we'll put those up for folks to vote on. And so you can call all your family and friends and say, go look at my video and vote for it. And then at the end of the contest, we'll award a winner. And the winner will get, not sure exactly what it's going to be at this point. I think I'm leaning really towards a monetary credit towards the purchase of something in our store. And it would be at least enough to buy a full version of something. So how's that for being pretty darn nebulous? So if you've got some thoughts in mind as to what you'd like to see us give away, VidBlaster broadcast for $2,000. Yeah, we'll do that. This is not something that's being sponsored by VidBlaster or Wirecast or vMix. This is something that Tom Sinclair and Eastern Shore Broadcasting are sponsoring, so it's coming right out of my pocket. So that way I get to pick, and we won't play favorites. But if you've got something in particular that you'd like to see, that's what I'm struggling to say. If you have something in particular you'd like to see, let us know, and we'll take that into consideration and add it to the offering. Let's see. Okay. Let's go take a look at our PC build. And if you remember from last week that we have taken a scrap PC case. And this scrap PC case was from a, what did you call it? Pinnacle Systems put out a portable PC in, I think, between 96 and 2001 called the Stream Genie. And this is the Stream Genie that I had. Bought it off of eBay for $100. You can see a keyboard connector kind of out in front of it. I've taken off the keyboard, and I've gutted the case. The inside of the case looks like that. The motherboard's gone. The hard drive is gone. The 3.5-inch floppy drive is gone. All the video cards are gone. The power supply is gone. I mean, when I say gone, I still have them in a box, but I don't intend on using them. The motherboard was a monster. It was a full size, 12 by 14 motherboard. It was absolutely huge. The other thing, as we get into this build and we say, okay, we're going to take off-the-shelf components that you and I can buy either locally or over the internet, and put in this box, because I think that this might be a good blueprint for those of you that want to build something similar. And here you can see the back, what I'm going to call the back of the case. The side of the case would be this side. The other side of the case would have the monitor. So this side right here had an access panel we pulled off, and we pulled all the guts out. And then the back area where the PCIe cards would be, and where the motherboard's I/O would be, and where the power supply would exit are right here. Now, there is a plate on the left. Let me go back to this next picture right here. There's a plate on the left. It's just sort of resting in place right here. I've already removed it, but I put it back in place so that you could see where the power supply and the motherboard I/O connections go. And the I/O connections were actually made part of that little plate, because they didn't change. You didn't swap out your motherboard. You got the motherboard that came with it. So we pulled the plate out, and that's left us with a big gap, so we have to put the plate back in. And part of putting the plate back in was the fact that the plate and the I/O connections don't match up with what we want. We've got an ASRock motherboard for our Intel i7 2600K chip. Now that's I think it was either first or second generation i7. But it's available. It's here in the studio. It's quad core, so it's fast enough to do everything we need to do, we think. And in fact, that's what's producing this show today. Is not the very same one, but an i2600K 1K processor, slightly overclocked. But the motherboard I/O shield, you can see, has quite a few extra things on it. The old motherboard, I think, had 2 USB ports, and back then, you know, that was just amazing. Not one, but you had 2. Oh my! It also had a combination of the mouse and keyboard. Even though it was 2 PS2 ports on the motherboard, they combined into one cable. So it'll be interesting to see how we kind of make that work as we go forward. But we're trying to make that I/O plate on the bottom fit. Now, one of the things we thought about was taking the back plate out of an existing PC that we had in scrap here in the studio. And so that's what that looked like. And I thought, okay, that looks pretty promising, because our ASRock motherboard I/O plate will pop into that rectangle on the left, and then all we need to do is just mount this inside the case. So we went inside the case, and you can see it doesn't quite fit. In fact, not only doesn't quite fit, it's a 1/2 inch too long, because this case has got all sorts of supports and reinforcements in it, because it's portable, and it's pretty darn rugged. I mean, it's got rubber at every corner. So they expect you're going to be moving it around a lot. And if I were to shorten up this plate so that it was small enough to fit in the opening, it would lose a lot of its structural integrity. So we sort of said, forget about that idea. And we went back to the original back plate and realized, you know, that's going to be a little tricky too. It's actually about almost exactly the same size as the exposed portions of the motherboard's I/O plate. So we're going to do a little metal work on this one. The nice thing is that the power supply will bolt right up, so we don't have to modify the power supply mount if we do this. And yeah, there's a shot of the motherboard box and a shot of the motherboard. This is the first time I've bought a motherboard where it actually came with this nice little foam cushion around it. I thought that was pretty neat. So hat tip to the guys at ASRock for the foam. And here's the motherboard sort of set into position just temporarily. But we realize as we set it into position temporarily, here's a shot of the back plate. We've got a second clearance issue. So we had the problem trying to get the back plate that came with the motherboard popped in there. And now we realize that the motherboard itself has a clearance issue between the audio connections and the left side of the PCIe card holders there. So we're going to have to do some little Dremel work there to cut a little opening for that. Kind of interesting as this project goes by is that we find out, you know, what we'd hoped was going to be a drag and drop. Take this out, put that in. What we find out is that even though the case is set up with a standard, you know, motherboard screw pattern with the standoffs just the way you wanted to, there's certain parts of the case that had to be beefed up for its use. That meant that you know, we're going to have to do some mods that involve destruction in order to get this guy to work. So we'll be doing some hacksaw work and some Dremel work before next week to see if we can't get the motherboard fitting in there with the back plate on. And once we do that, then we can begin to make progress. The other problems that we're going to have to overcome, I think, and let's see if we can zoom in on this just a little bit, is the I don't know if you can see on the left-hand side that white power connector. That's a 4-pin power connector, kind of the old style, and that goes to the monitor. And then there is a video. Yeah, there it is, right there on the right side. Right there, that black cable right there is a VGA VGA connector. So that's going to be, and that actually connects on the outside surface of the back plate. So the keyboard and the mouse combination and this VGA video connection for the monitor are all mount on the back plate. But the power supply for the monitor, we'll have to see. Not quite sure how much juice that little rascal draws. We've got an 800 watt, was it 800 watt or 650? No, excuse me, 600 watt power supply that we're going to start with because we had it on the shelf. We're trying to do this from our sort of our scrap pile to say, you know, if we can do it, and you know, here's how much the total cost was. I think we've got $117 in the case. We've got $139 in the motherboard, and then I've got a video card on hand. I've got the power supply on hand. I've got the processor on hand. I've got RAM on hand. I've got operating system. I've got hard drives, solid-state hard drives, as well as platter terabyte backup. So I think I've got everything else on hand I need. Oh, and then then capture cards. I've got a Osprey 450E, which is a standard definition capture card. I've got an extra Blackmagic Intensity Pro, and then I've got a StarTech that PED, HD, whatever it was, kind of a little Intensity Pro knockoff card. So I've got several options in terms of capture, as well as, of course, you know, webcams and IP cams. So we'll have to see. Again, the thought is that this build is going to be oriented towards a portable PC, one that we can take out to a football game, a soccer match, a polo match, a swim meet, a city council meeting, and with minimal setup. You know, literally plugging in power, plugging in internet, or else going Wi-Fi to a phone or a Verizon MiFi device, and then plugging in, you know, house sound or our sound and camera, and then we're ready to roll. From a software standpoint, we're probably going to set this up the same way that the studio production PC is set up, and that is with Wirecast to encode and stream and record, with vMix to produce, and with VidBlaster to produce. And the reason for that is because, from my perspective, that's an easy it's an easy workflow because it's all familiar to me. If I were to say, okay, we're going to rent this out, then that's a different story, because you know we run into some licensure problems at that point. So we would have to do that a little differently. But it may be that that's the case. You know, we want something that's really bulletproof. Not that we're going to be slinging it around, but that it will, you know, end up in the trunk of a car. It will get wheeled up to a press box or strolled into a city council meeting. And the other question we have, again, this is a 15-year-old case, a 15-year-old keyboard, and a 15-year-old monitor. Wasn't able to test any of it before we started this build, so hopefully the monitor will be good and the keyboard will be good. And that's the reason why we bought it the way we did, because it had the monitor and the keyboard built in. I've priced cases like this brand new, $2,500, brand new. And for me, $2,500 is a little much for a test build. And you know, the whole idea here was that we're sort of building this guy from scraps. We're building it from, we bought a motherboard because we needed a full-size ATX motherboard, and I've never used those in any of my PCs before. It's always been the micro, the mini ATX or the micro ITX, or maybe it's the micro ATX and the mini ITX. Anyway, the smaller boards. So this is kind of interesting to go with a big board. And with the way this case is configured, it's going to be interesting too to mount a cooler atop the processor, because that's where the power supply is. There's about maybe that much room above the power supply. So we may, I do have, I experimented at one point with a liquid cooled PC, a CPU cooler. And so that's kind of a low profile over the CPU itself, and then the fluid lines go off to a kind of a radiator looking device somewhere else with a fan attached to it. So we may pull that out of mothballs and try that and see too. It's nice kind of having a big box of spare parts, so you never know what kind of Frankenstein creature you can find. In fact, we may end up naming this Frankenstein because his parts have come from all over. Okay, well that's the progress so far. Not much progress, mostly running into snags, but that's the way it is when you're kind of cutting new ground. Now, I would encourage you, if this is kind of interesting you, exciting you, go to eBay and sign in and do a watch on every Stream Genie that's out there. I think this one was going for $250 as a buy it now. It was sitting there, wasn't doing anything. A bunch of people were watching it, and so I shot the guy that was selling it. I think he was probably selling it on behalf of somebody else. He was one of those clearinghouse guys. I shot him a note and said, will you take $100 for it? And within an hour, I had a reply. Yes, I'll take $100 for it. Sold. So, maybe I left some money on the table, but I thought $100 was a pretty good deal compared to $2,500. But again, untested, not sure. I know I've seen some Stream Genies on eBay. There was one on there for $1,500, another one on there for $2,000. Those apparently are fully functional. Would say you're on your own if you want to try one of those, because I think it was the Windows NT operating system or XP or something like that. So it's old stuff, and of course none of it's supported. Now the Pinnacle software was very interesting. You may want to get it just so you could study how they did the software. But what's available from vMix and VidBlaster and Wirecast today is 100 times, 1,000 times better than what was back then. So many different variables and things you had to set that are all virtually automated by now. So it's not a contest. Full disclosure, and probably should have mentioned this at the top of the show, I am an authorized reseller for VidBlaster and for vMix, and we offer a lot of products in our store, our streaming accessory store. Basically, those are all just supplied by Amazon, but they are products that we have tested and used, or else folks that we know and trust have tested and used. And so there's generally a personal comment on each one of the products. And it can be anything from a green screen to a camera to a capture device, audio equipment, mixers, mics, that kind of stuff. So if you're getting started and you want some direction, that's a direction you can look, and you can build a budget system with the stuff out of that store pretty easily. So that brings us to the end of our time, but do want to commend to you our contest coming up again in March, starting in the middle of March, ending in the end of March. And if you got some ideas on that, shoot me an email, tom@streamingidiots.com. Coming up maybe next week will be Ted Kazmierzak from tally-lights.com to help us demo the Tally Lights that he sent me that are sitting, or not sitting, they're flying down the interstate in Tennessee right now. And the folks at Neural Net, who have got this cool live-to-air product that will allow you to bring in 4 Skype guests or 4 video guests without all the problems that you'd had to deal with Skype or Zoom or WebRTC. So that'll be coming up in the near future, not next week, but sometime soon, we think. Definitely before NAB, because I think they want the box that they're sending me, they want back before NAB. So we're looking for that the tail end of February or into March. So there's some fun stuff coming up the pike. I'm Tom Sinclair. This has been Streaming Idiots. It's been my pleasure to bring it to you. Check out our website, easternshorebroadcasting.com, if you'd like to know more about us. And I think you can find links to all of our old videos there. So if you're looking for something about vMix or VidBlaster or different ways to stream different things, we can help you with that there. So that's it. Hey, we're done. We're done. We did okay. We did okay. So thanks so much for watching, and look forward to seeing you again sometime. So pop in and let us know what's going on. Take care.